Admiral Vextar walked into the big meeting room. His body was made of crystal that shined under the bright lights. Around him sat leaders from 12 different alien worlds. They were all talking quietly among themselves as he turned on a big screen that showed pictures in the air. "Important leaders," Vextar said in his deep voice. "I come here not as someone who wins battles, but as someone who has seen what happens when you think humans are weak." The alien called Quindar from the Nexari people made a loud sound of disgust. "You talk about creatures that can barely leave their home planet. They have old rockets and simple metal tools. That was 3 years ago," Vextar said in a worried voice. "Now they have ships that we cannot understand. I have seen their war fleets turn entire battle groups into dust in just a few minutes." High Counselor Thanelos from the Altarian Empire leaned forward. "You lost to these humans, did you not, Admiral? Maybe your thinking is clouded because you feel shame." The room filled with clicking and chirping laughter from the different alien species. Vextar felt angry inside, but he stayed calm on the outside. 3 months ago, I commanded the 7th Fleet. We had 47 big warships, 130 smaller ships, and over 300 support ships. We met a single human exploration ship near a star system called Kepler 442. His voice became very quiet. "In 6 hours, I was running away with only 12 damaged ships." The laughter stopped completely. "That cannot be true," whispered Counselor Drakmore. "No single ship could do that." "It was not one ship," Vextar said quickly. "Somehow they called for help. Ships appeared from nowhere, faster than our sensors could see them. They moved through space like friction, and weight meant nothing to them. Their weapons—" He stopped, his eyes growing dark with the memory. "Their weapons cut through our best shields like they were made of paper." Ambassador Quindar hit his desk with his arm. "Even if this crazy story were true, what do you want us to do? Stop our expansion? The Nexari Collective has already sent forces to human space." "Then you are already dead," Vextar said quietly. "I have studied their history and culture. They call their world a death world for a good reason. Everything on their planet evolved to kill everything else. They are survivors, warriors, and inventors born from endless fighting. And now—" He turned on another display showing reports from deep space watching stations. Now they are no longer stuck in their home system. The reports showed huge energy readings moving through space, heading toward the outer areas controlled by the Nexari Collective. The readings were unlike anything in their databases. These ships seemed to bend space and time itself. "This is our final warning," Vextar finished. "Call back your fleets. Stay away from human space. Do not fight them. They are not like us. They do not fight for land or resources. When threatened, they fight until someone is completely destroyed, either them or you." As the council room exploded with angry arguing, none of them noticed the small spy device that had been quietly watching from the shadows outside the station. Its sensors had recorded every word, every display, every piece of battle information. Deep in human space, Captain Torres received the message on her spy ship called Prometheus. She studied the alien admiral's warnings with interest. "Well," she said quietly to her weapons officer, "it seems someone has been paying attention. Too bad his friends have not." The battle display showed Nexari fleet movements coming together toward human territory. Torres smiled grimly and opened a secret communication channel to Earth Command. "This is Torres on Prometheus. Package delivered. The diplomatic warning has been given and ignored. Request permission to go to Phase 2. The answer came immediately. "Permission granted, Captain. Show them why we are called Deathworlders." As the Prometheus powered up its experimental space-folding drive, Captain Torres could not help but wonder if the alien admiral truly understood what he had tried to warn his colleagues about. The human fleet was not just coming to defend their territory, they were coming to make an example that the entire galaxy would remember. Meanwhile, back in the council chamber, the arguing continued for hours. Some species demanded immediate military action against the humans. Others called for trying to make peace through talking. A few suggested running away from human space completely, but Admiral Vextar sat quietly watching the chaos around him. He had seen what human ships could do. He had watched his mighty fleet get torn apart by enemies who seemed to appear and disappear at will. He had looked into the cold eyes of human commanders who showed no fear, no doubt, only the absolute certainty that they would win. The other leaders did not understand. They saw humans as just another primitive species to be conquered or controlled. They thought in terms of normal space battles with predictable weapons and familiar tactics. They did not understand that humans were different. On their dangerous world, everything had tried to kill them for millions of years. They had learned to adapt, to overcome, to turn every disadvantage into a strength. When they finally reached the stars, they brought that deadly creativity with them. Vextar remembered the human captain he had briefly spoken to during his fleet's destruction. The woman had been polite, even respectful, as she offered him a chance to surrender. But behind her calm words, he had sensed something that chilled him to his core. Absolute confidence that she could destroy his entire fleet whenever she chose to. And she had been right. Fools, he whispered to himself as the council continued their pointless arguing. We should be begging for mercy, not planning attacks. But he knew they would not listen. Pride and arrogance had blinded them to the truth. They would send their fleets against humanity, convinced that numbers alone would bring victory. They would learn just as he had learned. But by then, it would be too late for many of them. As the meeting finally ended and the various ambassadors returned to their ships, Vexitar made his own decision. He would return to his homeworld and advise his government to stay as far away from human space as possible. Some warnings, he reflected sadly, could only be understood after experiencing the consequences of ignoring them. He just hoped that when those consequences came, there would be enough survivors left to remember the lesson. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you threatened a species that had evolved on a world where everything was designed to kill you. And Admiral Vexitar suspected that the lesson would be written in fire across the stars. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the command bridge of the UES Retribution. She watched the battle display with cold satisfaction. Spread across 3 light years, the Nexari 7th Attack Fleet was keeping their standard formation. This was a textbook approach that would have been devastating against any normal enemy. Unfortunately for them, humans had stopped being normal the moment they had taken apart their first crashed alien ship and learned how it worked. Commodore Richards reports the Vengeance battle. Group is in position, announced Lieutenant Hayes from the communication station. Admiral Park confirms the Apocalypse carrier group has completed their micro-jump. All stealth fields are working. Vasquez nodded. Her enhanced eyes could process data streams that would blind a normal human. 3 battle groups, 67 ships total, completely invisible to the approaching alien fleet. The humans had learned much from studying captured alien technology, but they had improved it in ways the original designers never imagined. Ma'am, called out Tactical Officer Brooks. We are receiving standard Nexari messages. They are demanding our surrender and offering to accept us as a slave species. A bitter laugh escaped Vasquez's lips. How generous of them. Open a channel, Mr. Brooks. Let us observe proper first contact protocols. The main screen flickered to life, showing the insect-like features of Fleet Commander Zalthek on his flagship Dominion. The Nexari's compound eyes glittered with what their alien study experts had identified as amusement. Unknown vessels. Zalthek's voice came through the universal translator. You are trespassing in space claimed by the Nexari Collective. Surrender immediately, and your species will be granted status as industrial workers within our empire. Vasquez stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. Fleet Commander Zalthek, I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Navy. You are violating the Kepler Accords, which clearly establish this system as within human territorial space. The alien's mouth parts clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Human? Ah, yes, we have heard rumors of your kind. Primitives who barely crawled from their gravity well. You will make adequate laborers, assuming you survive the processing. I see, Vasquez replied evenly. Before we proceed, I am required by Earth Fleet regulations to offer you one final opportunity to withdraw. Turn around, leave this system, and no harm will come to your vessels or crew. Zaltek's laughter intensified. You amuse me, human. I command 300 vessels of the line. My ships carry enough firepower to burn entire worlds to glass. You have what? A handful of crude metal shells? Actually, Vasquez said, checking her wrist display. We have 67 vessels currently targeting your formation. Each one is equipped with weaponry that makes your planet destroyers look like children's toys. The alien commander's amusement faded slightly. His sensor officers were frantically working their stations, but their displays showed empty space around the human ships. Impossible. Our sensors detect no additional vessels. Vasquez smiled. Mr. Brooks, decloak the fleet. The stars around the Nexari formation suddenly blazed to life as 67 human warships materialized from nothing. Each vessel was sleek and predatory, bristling with weapons that pulsed with barely contained energy. The largest among them dwarfed the Nexari flagship, their hulls bearing the scars of 100 battles across a dozen star systems. Zalthek's compound eyes widened. His bridge crew erupted in panicked chittering. How? Our sensors showed nothing. Adaptive camouflage, Vasquez explained casually. We learned it from some alien prisoners. Of course, we made a few improvements. Your ship's sensors are actually helping to power our stealth systems. The harder you scan, the more invisible we become. The Nexari commander's voice rose higher. This changes nothing. We still outnumber you 5-1. Yes, but here is something your intelligence reports probably missed. Vasquez's expression hardened. We are not just any humans, Commander. We are the Deathworlder fleet. Every ship in this formation has crew from humanity's most dangerous military units. Veterans of the resource wars, survivors of the Martian siege. The best and deadliest our species has to offer. She paused, letting that sink in. More importantly, every single one of us volunteered for this assignment, knowing we probably would not make it home. Do you understand what that means, Zalthek? You are not facing soldiers fighting for pay or glory. You are facing humans who have already accepted death. We are here for one reason: to make sure that every species in this galaxy understands the cost of threatening Earth. The alien fleet was beginning to spread into defensive formations, but their movement seemed sluggish compared to the fluid repositioning of the human vessels. Last chance, Commander, Vasquez said softly. Withdraw now and we will let you leave with your lives and ships intact. Try to fight us and I guarantee that not one of your vessels will survive the next hour. Zalthek's response came as a beam of coherent energy lancing toward the Retribution. The human ship did not even attempt to dodge. Its shields absorbed the blast without so much as a flicker. Vasquez sighed. I was hoping you would make the smart choice. Mr. Brooks, transmit to all ships weapons free. Show them what a death world teaches its children. The space between the two fleets exploded into light and fury, but it was immediately clear that this would be no battle. It would be a demonstration of the difference between those who fought for conquest and those who fought for survival. The first volley from the Nexari fleet lit up space with enough energy to glass a small moon. Particle beams, plasma torpedoes, and antimatter charges streaked across the void, all converging on the human formation with devastating precision. None of them found their targets. The human ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. The Retribution twisted through space in a corkscrew pattern that defied every law of physics the Nexari understood. The massive dreadnought moving with the grace of a fighter craft. Inertial dampeners at maximum efficiency, reported Navigator Sterling. Gravitational anchors deployed. We are riding the space-time like a wave. The human ships did not just dodge the incoming fire, they seemed to dance through it, weaving between energy beams with milliseconds to spare. Where alien weapons did manage to make contact, they simply dissipated against shields that bent the very fabric of reality. Within minutes, it became clear that the Nexari were not fighting ships at all. They were fighting something that moved like living creatures, anticipated their every move and struck back with surgical precision. One by one, Nexari vessels began to explode under concentrated human fire. But these were not random destructions. Each ship was targeted and eliminated with mathematical precision, their crews given exactly enough time to send distress signals before their vessels were reduced to expanding clouds of plasma. Ma'am, Tactical Officer Brooks announced, enemy formation is breaking up. Approximately 40% casualties in the first 10 minutes. Vasquez watched as the surviving Nexari ships tried to flee, only to find human vessels appearing, in their path like predators herding prey. Open a channel. To all enemy vessels, she ordered. Attention. Nexari survivors, her voice carried across all frequencies. You have just witnessed what happens when you threaten a species that evolved on a world where everything was designed to kill us. We do not fight like you. We do not show mercy to those who would enslave our people. Remember this day and tell your leaders, humanity is no longer prey. The first wave of alien weapons lit up space like a small star being born. Energy beams, plasma bombs, and matter-destroying charges raced across the empty void, all aimed at the human fleet with deadly accuracy. Not one of them hit anything. Commander Vasquez watched calmly as her ships performed moves that should have been impossible. The Retribution twisted through space in patterns that made no sense. the huge warship moving like a dancer instead of a 2-kilometer-long piece of metal and machinery. Gravity controllers working perfectly, reported Navigator Sterling. Space-time anchors are holding. We are riding the fabric of reality like surfers on a wave. The human ships did not just avoid the alien fire, they seemed to dance between the energy beams, spinning and diving with split-second timing. When enemy weapons did manage to touch them, the attacks simply bounced off shields that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "Ma'am," Tactical Officer Brooks announced with professional calm. "Admiral Park is asking permission to demonstrate the Ragnarok Protocol." Vasquez thought for a moment. The Ragnarok Protocol was perhaps humanity's most closely guarded secret. It was a weapon system that even most human commanders did not fully understand. Using it here would reveal capabilities that Earth had hoped to keep hidden for another decade. But the message needed to be clear and unforgettable. Permission granted. "Tell Admiral Park to make it spectacular." 3 light minutes away, Admiral James Park received the message on his flagship, the supercarrier Apocalypse. At 2 kilometers long and bristling with technology that pushed the boundaries of what matter could do. It was humanity's newest and most devastating vessel. "You heard the lady," Park announced to his bridge crew. "Mr. Tanaka, bring the primary weapon online." The Apocalypse began to change shape. What the aliens had thought was a standard carrier suddenly revealed itself as something far more frightening. The ship's hull split open like a blooming flower, revealing a massive device at its core. It was a sphere of impossible geometry that seemed to bend light around itself. "Sir," Engineering Chief Rodriguez called out over the communication system. "Exotic matter containment is stable. Quantum Cascade Initiator is charged and ready." "Target the Nexari command cluster," Park ordered. "Fire." What happened next would be debated by scientists and philosophers for centuries. The sphere at the heart of the Apocalypse pulsed once, not with light but with something far more fundamental. Reality itself seemed to hiccup. A wave of distorted spacetime raced toward the Nexari formation at speeds that made light look slow. When it reached the enemy command ships, something impossible occurred. They simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not vaporized, not reduced to atoms. They were edited out of reality itself. 12 Nexari dreadnoughts, including Fleet Commander Zaltek's flagship, vanished without so much as an energy signature to mark their passing. The wave continued outward, consuming another 30 vessels before Admiral Park ordered the weapon powered down. The remaining Nexari fleet hung motionless in space, their crews paralyzed by the incomprehensible display of power they had just witnessed. Commander Vasquez opened a general communication channel to the survivors. "Attention Nexari vessels. What you have just witnessed is called a quantum causality disruptor. Your ships were not destroyed. They were prevented from ever existing in this location. Your fleet has just been reduced by 1/3, and we used approximately 0.3% of our available firepower to do it." Her voice carried across all frequencies, ensuring every alien crew member could hear her words. "I want you to return to your space and deliver a message to your high command. Tell them that humanity has been studying your technology, your tactics, and your psychology for over a decade. We know how you think, how you fight, and how you die. More importantly, we know that you see war as a tool for expansion and profit." The tactical display showed the remaining human ships slowly converging on the paralyzed alien formation, their weapons systems charging but not yet firing. "We do not fight for profit or territory. When humans go to war, we go to war for extinction. Yours or ours. There is no middle ground, no negotiated peace, no surrender that we will accept once you threaten our worlds." A few of the smaller Nexari vessels were beginning to turn away, their crews having apparently decided that running away was better than staying to die. "You have one chance to avoid the complete annihilation of your species. Return to your space and convince your leaders to issue a formal apology to Earth, along with payment for the colonies you have already attacked. You have 1 standard galactic month to comply." Vasquez paused, letting her words sink in. "If we do not receive your response by then, the next fleet you see will not be here to demonstrate our capabilities. They will be here to demonstrate what we learned about stellar engineering from our last war." She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "Mr. Brooks, let them go. But I want stealth probes attached to every ship that leaves this system. If they are smart, they will go straight home. If they are not, understood, ma'am. What about the ones that do not leave?" Vasquez looked at the display, where approximately 40 Nexari vessels were still maintaining formation. apparently too shocked or too proud to retreat. "They have made their choice," she said quietly. "Execute Protocol 7. No survivors, no wreckage, no evidence. Let the ones who flee carry the only record of what happened here." As the human fleet began its final approach, the space around the remaining alien vessels began to warp and twist in ways that would give their survivors nightmares for generations. But there would be no survivors from this group. The demonstration was over, but the education was just beginning. Throughout the fleet, human crews worked with calm efficiency. These were not soldiers driven by bloodlust or revenge. They were professionals doing a job that needed to be done. Every action was calculated, every move deliberate. They had learned from their dangerous homeworld that survival often required decisive action. Sometimes, showing mercy to an enemy who would not show mercy to you was simply another form of suicide. The remaining Nexari ships fought desperately, but their weapons could not penetrate human shields. Their sensors could not track human movements, and their tactics had been studied and countered years ago. One by one, they were eliminated with surgical precision. When it was over, space was clean. No debris, no bodies, no evidence that a battle had ever taken place. Only the fleeing Nexari survivors would carry the tale of what they had witnessed. Commander Vasquez stood quietly on her bridge, watching the last enemy ship disappear into hyperspace. "Ma'am," Brooks asked quietly, "do you think they will learn?" Vasquez considered the question. "Some will, others will not. But they will all remember. And sometimes, Commander, memory is more powerful than understanding." 3 weeks after the Kepler incident, emergency meetings were happening all across the galaxy, in the crystal towers of the Alterian Empire, the great council chambers of the Nexari Collective, and the living computers of the Vorthan Empire. The same conversations were taking place with growing panic. Ambassador Kethvar of the Nexari stood before the Galactic Trade Consortium. Her normally calm appearance was cracking under the weight of what she had to report. The representatives of 47 different species watched in uncomfortable silence as she turned on the holographic recording. "This is all that remains of our 7th attack fleet," she announced, her voice barely steady, 300 vessels reduced to this. The hologram showed empty space broken only by expanding clouds of superheated gas. No wreckage, no debris, no bodies. Just the fading energy signatures of what had once been a fleet capable of conquering entire star systems. "Impossible," whispered Trade Secretary Muldar of the Empire. "No weapon system could produce such complete destruction without leaving traces." The survivors report something called quantum causality disruption, Kethvar continued. According to their testimony, entire ships were simply removed from existence. Not destroyed, erased, as if they had never been there at all. Supreme Coordinator Veltash of the consortium leaned forward on his floating platform. "How many human vessels were involved in this engagement?" 67, Kethvar replied, looking at her datapad. "Against our 300. They were outnumbered better than 4 to 1, and they eliminated 2/3 of our fleet without taking a single casualty." The chamber erupted in agitated sounds as representatives tried to process this information. Several species demanded immediate military action, others called for diplomatic solutions. A few suggested complete retreat from human space. "There is more," Kethvar announced, silencing the chamber. "Our intelligence sources have intercepted communications from across the galaxy. The humans have not just been developing weapons, they have been recruiting." A new display activated, showing star charts with movement patterns highlighted in red. Every aggressive species we have encountered in the past 2 centuries has reported similar attacks. The Drakmiran Syndicate lost their entire 6th raiding squadron to what they described as ships that moved like living things. The Kethkari war machine reports that their border fleets have been encountering vessels that appear to be constructed from living metal. Trade Secretary Muldar's light patterns shifted to deep orange. This was a sign of extreme worry among his species. "You are suggesting that humanity has been collecting technology from conquered enemies?" "Not just technology," Kethvar corrected grimly. "Personnel. Our spies report that human vessels now carry crew members from dozens of species. All volunteers, all former enemies who chose to join them rather than face extinction." The implication hit the chamber like a physical blow. The humans were not just defeating their enemies, they were converting them. "How is this possible?" demanded Coordinator Veltash. Our psychological profiles indicate that most species maintain strong loyalty to their birth civilizations. Ambassador Quindar, who had been silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke up. Because they are not conquering us. They are offering us something we have never had before. The chance to be part of something greater than territorial expansion and resource acquisition. The chamber fell silent. I have been monitoring human communications. For the past month, Quindar continued. Their military doctrine is not based on domination. It is based on protection. Every species that joins them does so voluntarily, and they are offered full participation in human society. Equal rights, equal technology, equal representation. Propaganda, scoffed Maldar. No species shares technology freely. Then explain this. Quindar activated his own display, showing technical blueprints that made several representatives gasp in recognition. Catherian shield generators, Drakmiran propulsion systems, Kethkari weapons platforms, fourth-hand bio-neural computers. All of this technology is being openly shared throughout human space, and it is being improved upon. Supreme Coordinator Veltash's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They are building an alliance, not through conquest or economic pressure, but through voluntary cooperation. An alliance of Deathworlders, Kethvar added. According to our biological surveys, 17 of the species that have joined humanity originated on worlds classified as extreme hazard for most galactic life. They are not just sharing technology, they are sharing survival instincts. The chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Fear was beginning to replace anger. What are their demands? Veltash asked finally. Kethavar consulted her notes. Formal apology for unprovoked attacks on human colonies, payment for damaged infrastructure and lost lives, and immediate cessation of all aggressive expansion into human-claimed space. And if we refuse? Kethvar's optical organs darkened. According to their transmission, the next contact we have with them will involve something they called stellar engineering applications. Our astrophysics division believes this refers to weaponizing stars themselves. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Finally, Trade Secretary Maldar spoke. What does the consortium recommend? Compliance, Veltash replied without hesitation. Immediate and complete compliance. And we need to open diplomatic channels immediately. If humanity is building an alliance of this nature, we need to determine whether we can join it rather than fight it. Join them? Kethavar's voice rose in outrage. They humiliated our fleet. They made us look like primitives. Yes, Veltash replied calmly. And then they let the survivors go home to tell the story. They could have eliminated every ship, every witness, every trace of what happened. Instead, they sent us a message. They are not trying to conquer us, Ambassador. They are trying to educate us. As the emergency session continued, none of the participants noticed the small probe that had been monitoring their discussions from the shadows of the station's outer hull. Deep in human space, the intelligence officers aboard the reconnaissance vessel Hermes were already preparing their report. The galaxy was learning. The question was whether they were learning fast enough. In a secure chamber aboard the Hermes, Captain Lisa Chang reviewed the intelligence data with her senior staff. Analysis, Commander Torres? She asked. Mixed results, Captain. Approximately 60% of the major powers are moving toward diplomatic solutions. The remaining 40% are mobilizing for what they call a final solution to the human problem. Chang nodded grimly. How many ships are we looking at? Current estimates suggest they could assemble a coalition fleet of over 10,000 vessels. Every major military power except the ones already negotiating with us. And our response? Torres smiled coldly. Admiral Webb has been authorized to proceed with Phase 3. The stellar engineering demonstration is scheduled for next week. Chang looked out at the stars, thinking about the irony of the situation. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of the day they would join a galactic community. Now that they had found one, they were having to teach it the difference between civilization and survival. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UES Prometheus, watching as the star-designated K4047 underwent its final preparations. Around him, the combined fleet of humanity and its allied species stretched across 3 solar systems. Over 2,000 vessels represented the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral, called Captain Lisa Morgan from the command bridge. We are receiving the final diplomatic transmission from the Nexari High Command. Webb did not turn from the observation window. Let me guess. They are refusing our terms and demanding that we submit to their authority. Yes, sir. They are also claiming that their assembled coalition represents over 70% of galactic civilization, and that continued resistance is futile. A bitter smile crossed Webb's weathered features. 3 months had passed since the Kepler incident, and instead of accepting the human terms, the major galactic powers had chosen to unite against what they saw as an upstart species, threatening their established order. How many ships do they have in their coalition fleet? Webb asked. Current estimates suggest 12,000 vessels, sir. They are positioning themselves at the edge of this system, probably hoping to overwhelm us with sheer numbers. Webb finally turned from the observation window. His enhanced eyes processed tactical displays that floated in the air around him. The enemy formation was indeed impressive. A massive wall of ships stretched across space like a metallic constellation. And they still do not understand what they are facing, he murmured. Commander Torres, please open a channel to the coalition fleet. The main display flickered to life, showing the assembled leadership of the Galactic Coalition. Admiral Vextar of the Kytherian Empire stood at the center, flanked by representatives of the Nexari, Altarian, and Kethkari fleets. This is Admiral Webb of the United Earth Navy, he began formally. I am required by our military code to offer you one final opportunity to withdraw from this system and accept our diplomatic terms. Vexitar's crystal features reflected no emotion. Admiral Webb, you are facing the combined might of 47 galactic civilizations. Your 2,000 ships cannot prevail against our 12,000. Surrender now, and we will consider limiting the damage to your homeworld. I appreciate your confidence, Webb replied calmly. However, I believe you are operating under several fundamental misunderstandings about both our capabilities and our intentions. He gestured, and the tactical display shifted to show the star at the center of the system. It was a massive red giant nearing the end of its life cycle. 3 days ago, my engineering teams finished installing a network of quantum resonance amplifiers around K447. These devices are designed to trigger a controlled stellar collapse, followed by a directed supernova event. The alien commanders exchanged uncertain glances. Vextar's optical sensors focused intently on the display. You are claiming the ability to weaponize a star? He asked skeptically. Not claiming, Admiral, demonstrating. Webb nodded to his tactical officer. Mr. Harrison, initiate the quantum cascade. Deep within the star's core, devices smaller than a human fist began to emit precisely calibrated gravitational waves. The stellar matter, already unstable due to the star's age, began to resonate at frequencies that caused the nuclear fusion process to accelerate exponentially. Sir, announced the science officer, stellar core temperature is increasing beyond predicted parameters. The cascade is self-sustaining now. Webb opened the communication channel again. Gentlemen, I recommend you move your fleets to a minimum safe distance of 2 light-years. You have approximately 47 minutes before the supernova event. The star was already beginning to change. Its red surface rippled with massive solar flares that dwarfed planets. Energy readings were climbing toward levels that registered on galactic scales. This is impossible, breathed the Nexari fleet commander. No species possesses technology capable of this. Of course it is impossible, Webb interrupted. According to your scientific models, it should take us centuries to develop this level of stellar engineering. But you have made the same mistake that every species we have encountered has made. You have underestimated what necessity can accomplish. He gestured to the surrounding human fleet, and for the first time the alien commanders noticed something that chilled them to their cores. The human ships were not fleeing. They were holding position, apparently unconcerned by the imminent stellar explosion. You see, when humanity first encountered hostile alien species, we had 2 choices: develop defensive capabilities beyond anything in our current technology base or face extinction. We chose the former. The star was now pulsing with increasing violence, its surface churning with magnetic storms that were already affecting navigation systems throughout the system. 30 minutes to supernova, announced the science officer. Admiral Webb. Vextar's voice carried a note of desperate urgency. Surely you do not intend to sacrifice your own fleet to make a point. This will destroy everything within 2 light-years. Webb smiled grimly. Admiral, you still do not understand what you are looking at. My ships are not equipped with conventional propulsion systems. Every vessel in this fleet can achieve faster-than-light travel through dimensional phase shift technology. We can be in hyperspace before the shockwave reaches us." He paused, letting that information sink in. "But more importantly, we have been testing directed supernova technology for the past 18 months. This star will explode exactly as we have calculated, and the energy will be channeled through a network of gravitational lenses we have positioned throughout this system. Instead of a spherical explosion, we are creating a directed energy beam." The tactical display updated to show the predicted path of the stellar energy. It was a focused lance of power that would cut through space directly toward the Coalition fleet's position. 20 minutes to supernova," the science officer reported. "All human vessels report ready for emergency jump." Vextar's voice was barely above a whisper. "You are demonstrating that you can destroy entire star systems. Not just star systems, Admiral. We can extinguish suns, trigger stellar collapses, and redirect the resulting energy with pinpoint accuracy across galactic distances. What you are witnessing is humanity's solution to the problem of fighting a galactic war while being outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Webb's expression hardened. "We do not need to conquer your worlds or defeat your fleets in conventional battle. We can simply remove the stars that power your civilizations." The realization hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. They were not just outgunned. They were facing an enemy that could eliminate the basic prerequisites for life itself. 10 minutes to supernova. "All human vessels prepare for emergency jump." "Admiral Vextar," Webb said formally, "this is the last communication you will receive from us. Return to your respective governments and inform them that humanity's terms are no longer negotiable. You have 72 hours to transmit formal surrender documents to Earth Command. Any species that refuses will have their home star added to our targeting list. 5 minutes to supernova. Beginning emergency jump sequence." As the human fleet began to phase out of normal space, Webb opened one final channel. "Oh, and Admiral, when you make your report, make sure to mention that this was our smallest stellar engineering device. The weapons we have prepared for your home systems are considerably more comprehensive." The last human ship vanished into hyperspace just as K-447 reached the critical point. The star collapsed, rebounded, and exploded with the fury of a small galaxy being born. But instead of expanding in all directions, the energy was caught, focused, and directed through the quantum lenses humanity had positioned throughout the system. The resulting beam of pure stellar fire carved through space at near-light speed, passing directly through the position the Coalition fleet had occupied moments before. The aliens had fled, but the message was unmistakable. 71 hours later, Earth Command received the first surrender document. Within a week, 46 of the 47 Coalition species had formally capitulated to human terms. The age of human expansion had begun, but it would be built on a foundation that no galactic civilization had ever attempted. Voluntary cooperation backed by the certain knowledge that the alternative was the extinction of stars themselves. The Deathworld had taught its children well. Now it was time to teach the galaxy. The distress signal cut through space like a scream in the darkness. Captain Vex pressed his 4 hands against the control panel of his dying ship, the merchant vessel Bright Hope. His crew was scattered around the bridge, some unconscious, others barely breathing. The life support systems were failing, and they had maybe 6 hours left before the air ran out completely. 3 days ago, the Krillian pirates had attacked them without warning. They stripped the cargo hold clean, destroyed the engines, and left them to drift in the void. The pirates laughed as they departed, telling the crew they would die slowly in the cold darkness of space. Vex was an Altarian, a peaceful species that had never known war. His people were traders and diplomats, not fighters. When the pirates came with their massive ships and terrible weapons, his crew had no choice but to surrender. They hoped the pirates would show mercy, but Krillians were known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. "Captain," whispered his communications officer Nira, a young female barely out of training, "I'm detecting something on the long-range sensors. Multiple ships approaching from the outer system." Vex felt his heart skip a beat. "Rescue ships?" Nira frowned at her readings. "I don't know, sir. The signatures are strange. They're not like any civilian vessels in our database. These ships seem to be designed for war." Through the view screen, Vex could see 12 ships dropping out of hyperspace. They were dark and angular, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. Each ship was built like a predator, sleek and deadly. The designs were completely unknown to galactic databases. Unknown vessels, Vex transmitted weakly, using the last of his ship's power. This is Captain Vex of the merchant ship Bright Hope. We sent out a distress call 3 days ago. Are you from the Galactic Rescue Service? The response came in heavily accented Galactic Standard. Captain Vex, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Terran? Vex had never heard of that species before. Forgive me, Commander, but I'm not familiar with your people. Are you authorized rescue personnel? There was a pause. Then the alien voice replied, We're not officially authorized by anyone, Captain. But we heard someone was in trouble and we came to help. That's what we do. As the human ships moved closer, their sensors began scanning the area. What they found painted a grim picture across their tactical displays. Debris from dozens of destroyed vessels floated in the darkness. Nearby asteroids had been converted into prison camps where thousands of beings were held as slaves. The entire system was a monument to Krillian brutality. On the bridge of the lead human vessel, Iron Resolve, Commander Morrison studied the sensor readings with growing anger. He was a veteran of many conflicts, a man whose weathered face told stories of battles fought across distant worlds. At 50 years old, he had seen enough suffering to know when action was needed. Sir, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, we're detecting multiple life signs on that merchant vessel. They're in bad shape, but most are still alive. Good. Begin rescue operations immediately. Morrison turned to his tactical officer. What else are you seeing out there, Park? Lieutenant Commander Park's expression was grim. It's worse than we thought, sir. There are slave processing facilities on 3 different asteroids. Thousands of beings from dozens of species. The pirates have been using this system as their main operation base for years. Morrison's jaw tightened. The Terran Defense Fleet had come to answer a simple distress call. They were about to walk into something much larger and more dangerous. But that didn't change anything. People needed help and humans had never been good at walking away from that. Sir, Torres called out urgently, I'm detecting a large fleet approaching from the inner system. 37 ships, including 3 battlecruisers. They're broadcasting Krillian identification codes. Morrison stood from his command chair. How long until they reach us? 15 minutes at their current speed. The commander looked around at his bridge crew. These men and women had volunteered for a dangerous mission, knowing they might not return home. They had families, dreams, futures ahead of them, but they also had something that set humans apart from most galactic species. They couldn't ignore suffering, even when it meant facing impossible odds. All ships, Morrison announced over the fleet channel. This is Morrison. We came here to save lives. Looks like we'll have to fight for the right to do it. Battle stations, everyone. Time to show these pirates what happens when they mess with innocent people. Meanwhile, aboard the dying merchant ship, Sergeant Davis of the Terran Marines was leading a boarding party through the damaged hull. His armored suit allowed him to work in the vacuum of space, cutting through twisted metal to reach the trapped crew members. When he finally broke through to the main compartment, he found the Altarian survivors huddled together in fear. They had heard stories about species from dangerous worlds, but they had never seen one up close. Davis removed his helmet, revealing a scarred human face and kind but determined eyes. Don't worry, he told them in broken Galactic Standard. We're here to get you out of this mess. Captain Vex stared at the alien warrior. There was something different about these humans. They moved with the confidence of natural predators, but their actions showed genuine care for strangers they had never met. What kind of people are you? Vex asked weakly. Davis smiled as he began helping the injured aliens toward the escape pods. We're the kind who can't sleep at night knowing someone needs help. Now let's get you somewhere safe before those pirates show up. Through the view screen, the approaching Krillian fleet was clearly visible now. 37 warships against 12 human vessels. Any rational species would have retreated immediately. But the humans were not behaving rationally. They were forming up for battle, moving their ships into attack formation as if they actually intended to fight. The lead Krillian ship opened communications, and the reptilian face of War Captain Thek appeared on screens throughout both fleets. His scarred features twisted into what might have been amusement. Unknown aliens, the Krillian hissed. You have entered sovereign space of the Krillian Empire. That merchant vessel was our lawful prize. Its crew belongs to us now. Leave immediately or we will destroy you. Morrison's response was calm and steady. War Captain, this is Commander Morrison. We're conducting a humanitarian rescue operation. These people are under our protection now. Thek's laugh was like grinding metal. Your protection? You have 12 ships. We have 37. You will surrender immediately, or you will burn with the rest of the debris in this system. Counteroffer, Morrison replied. You leave now and maybe we won't send you home in pieces. The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Throughout the galaxy, no one spoke to the Krillians that way. They were one of the most feared military powers in the sector, known for their ruthless efficiency and overwhelming force. You dare threaten us? Thek snarled. You will regret your insolence. All ships, attack formation. We'll teach these primitives to respect Krillian power. But as the two fleets closed for battle, something unprecedented was about to happen. The humans were about to introduce the galaxy to a concept that had been forgotten in centuries of political compromise and calculated diplomacy. The idea that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The rescue was about to become something far more significant. It was about to become humanity's first lesson to the galaxy about what happened when innocents were threatened in front of Deathworlders. The first exchange of weapons fire lit up the darkness of space like a violent thunderstorm. The Krillian fleet opened with a massive barrage, expecting to overwhelm the smaller human force through sheer firepower. Their plasma cannons and missile systems had destroyed countless enemies over the centuries. But something impossible happened. The human ships absorbed the punishment that should have crippled them. Their shields flared with energy but held firm. More shocking still, their return fire was devastatingly accurate. Within the first minute of combat, 2 Krillian destroyers were drifting wrecks, their hulls torn open by weapons the pirates had never seen before. War Captain Thek stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What kind of weapons do they possess? He demanded of his tactical officer. Unknown, sir, came the nervous reply. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The projectiles they're firing appear to be solid matter moving at incredible speeds. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Lieutenant Commander Park reported with grim satisfaction. Direct hits on 3 enemy vessels, sir. Their shields can't handle our railgun systems. Morrison nodded. Humanity had learned early that when you lived on a world trying to kill you every day, you developed better ways to kill back. Earth's harsh environment had forced humans to become innovators, always looking for more efficient ways to survive. That innovation extended to warfare. Target their command ship, Morrison ordered. Let's end this quickly. The human ships moved with a coordination that amazed the watching Krillians. Instead of the chaotic individual attacks favored by most galactic species, the humans fought as a single unit. Each ship supported the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that made it impossible for the pirates to find safe approaches. Aboard the rescue ship where the Altarian survivors were being treated, Dr. Elena Martinez worked to stabilize Captain Vex's injuries. The alien trader watched through the medical bay's view screen as the battle raged outside. Your people fight like devils, Vex whispered. I've never seen ships move like that or weapons fire with such precision. Dr. Martinez paused in her work. Captain, may I ask what your homeworld is like? Vex seemed confused by the question. Altair Prime is a peaceful place. Stable weather, gentle seasons, abundant food sources. We've never known conflict or hardship. It's what most species would call paradise. Martinez nodded slowly. That explains the difference. Captain, our world is classified as a Class 12 death world, the most dangerous rating possible. The Altarian's eyes widened. Such worlds were considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. Everything on Earth wants to kill you, Martinez continued. The weather can change from pleasant to deadly in minutes. We have storms that can destroy cities, predators that hunt in coordinated packs, diseases that can wipe out entire populations. We didn't choose to become warriors, Captain. Our world forced us to learn how to fight, or we would have died out long ago. Outside, the battle was turning into a complete rout. The Krillian ships, designed to intimidate weaker opponents, were no match for vessels built by a species that had spent millions of years learning to survive against impossible odds. Human weapons were more advanced, their tactics more sophisticated, and their determination absolute. War Captain Thek watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. Half his ships were already gone, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. These aliens fought with a cold efficiency that terrified him. Sir, his communications officer reported, We're receiving surrender requests from 6 of our ships. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Thek's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Krillian Empire had never retreated from battle, but they had never faced anything like these humans either. Open a channel to the human commander, he finally ordered. Morrison's image appeared on the Krillian view screen. The human's expression was calm but implacable. War Captain, I'm prepared to accept your surrender. Surrender? Thek's voice cracked with disbelief. The Krillian Empire does not surrender to anyone. Then you'll die here, Morrison replied simply. Your choice. The brutal honesty of the statement shocked Thek. Most galactic species would engage in lengthy negotiations, offering face-saving compromises. The humans seemed genuinely indifferent to Krillian pride or political considerations. You would destroy us all? Thek asked. If that's what it takes to protect the innocents you've been enslaving, yes. Morrison's voice carried absolute conviction. War Captain, I don't care about your empire or your reputation. I care about the thousands of beings you've captured and tortured. Either you surrender and face justice, or you die, and we free them anyway. In the slave processing facilities on the nearby asteroids, thousands of prisoners from dozens of species watched the battle through stolen communication devices. For years they had prayed for rescue that never came. The Galactic Council issued statements of concern but never took action. Now, finally someone was fighting for them. An elderly Centaurian named Orcs, who had been a slave for over a decade, spoke to his fellow prisoners. I don't know who these humans are, but they're willing to die for us. That's more than our own governments ever did. The battle was effectively over. Of the 37 Krillian ships that had entered the system, only 8 remained functional and they were badly damaged. The human fleet had suffered minor damage to 3 vessels and no casualties. War Captain Thek finally accepted reality. I surrender, he transmitted. My remaining ships will stand down. Morrison's response was immediate. All Krillian vessels will shut down weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be processed as prisoners of war. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed. As human Marines began boarding the surrendered vessels, Lieutenant Torres reported new contacts on the long-range sensors. Sir, we're detecting multiple ships approaching from various directions. They appear to be civilian vessels. Morrison frowned. Identification? Mixed, sir. Traders, passenger ships, even some small cargo haulers. They're all broadcasting the same message. They want to help with the rescue operations. Word of the battle was spreading faster than the humans had anticipated. Across the sector, beings who had lived in fear of the Krillians for decades were finally seeing hope. The mysterious humans had done what no galactic power had managed. They had stood up to the pirates and won. Captain Vex, now recovered enough to walk, approached Commander Morrison as the human leader toured the medical facility. Commander, I must ask, why did your people risk everything for strangers? You could have been killed. Morrison considered the question carefully. Captain, where we come from, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We heard your call for help, and we couldn't do nothing. But the odds were against you. Any rational analysis would have suggested retreat. Morrison smiled grimly. Captain, rationality is a luxury you can't afford when people are dying. Sometimes you have to do what's right even when it's not smart. As the human fleet began organizing rescue operations for the freed slaves, news of their victory was racing across galactic communication networks. The implications were staggering. An unknown species had appeared from nowhere and single-handedly defeated one of the sector's most feared military forces. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a new player in galactic politics, and this player operated by rules that no one had seen before. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace itself. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the story of the mysterious Terrans, who had appeared from nowhere to destroy a Krillian battle fleet. The reactions were mixed and intense. On Centrix Prime, the gleaming capital world of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions convened around the clock. Councillor Thex of the Andromedan Commonwealth stood before the assembled representatives, his blue scales reflecting the chamber's lights. Fellow councillors, Thex began, we face an unprecedented situation. An unknown military force has engaged in combat operations without authorization, resulting in the destruction of 37 vessels and the capture of a major Krillian base. Representative Nala of the Vegan Alliance interrupted. With respect, Counselor, perhaps we should be thanking these humans rather than condemning them. The Krillians have been a plague on peaceful commerce for decades. The method matters, argued General Zorth of the Hegemony Defense Corps. Any species capable of such military prowess represents a potential threat to galactic stability. We must approach them with extreme caution. Meanwhile, aboard the Iron Resolve, Commander Morrison was dealing with problems he had never anticipated. The liberation of the slave processing facilities had yielded nearly 4,000 beings from dozens of different species. The human fleet's resources were stretched to breaking point trying to care for them all. Dr. Martinez worked 18-hour shifts in the expanded medical bays, treating injuries and illnesses that human medicine had never encountered before. Her staff improvised constantly, adapting human medical equipment for alien physiologies. Commander, she reported during the morning briefing, we've stabilized most of the critical cases, but we're facing long-term challenges. Some of these beings have been enslaved for decades. The psychological trauma will take years to heal. Lieutenant Commander Park added his concerns. Sir, we're receiving dozens of distress calls from across the sector. Word has spread that someone finally stood up to the Krillians. Every oppressed colony in the region is calling for our help. Morrison studied the tactical display showing the scope of the problem. Red markers indicated over 40 systems where Krillian forces still operated with complete impunity. The scale was overwhelming. How long until Admiral Brooks arrives with reinforcements? He asked. 72 hours, sir. But we're also receiving priority transmissions from the Galactic Council. They want to meet with us immediately. As if summoned by those words, Lieutenant Torres announced an incoming transmission from Centrix Prime. The main view screen activated, showing the ornate council chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Counselor Thex appeared to be the spokesman. Commander Morrison, I am Counselor Thex, speaking for the Galactic Council. We require your immediate presence for emergency consultations regarding your recent military actions. Morrison's response was polite but firm. Counselor, we're currently engaged in humanitarian operations. Once we've ensured the safety of the beings we've rescued, we'll be happy to discuss our actions. Commander, you may not understand the complexity of this situation. Your unauthorized military intervention has destabilized an entire sector. There are established protocols for dealing with situations like this. Morrison's voice hardened slightly. Protocols? Counselor, where were your protocols when thousands of innocent beings were being enslaved? When merchant vessels were being destroyed for profit? The silence in the chamber was uncomfortable. Finally, Thex replied, the situation with the Krillians was complex. There were ongoing diplomatic negotiations. For how long? Morrison interrupted. Years, decades. While beings suffered and died in slave camps, he leaned forward, his weathered face showing decades of military experience. Counselor, where I come from when someone calls for help, you answer. Politics comes second. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the human command staff in thoughtful silence. Colonel Webb, who had arrived with the first wave of reinforcements, finally spoke. Sir, they're serious about this. Intelligence indicates several major powers are mobilizing fleets. They see us as a threat to galactic order. In the refugee sections of the human ships, the freed slaves were experiencing something many had thought impossible. Hope. Corex, the elderly Centaurian who had become an unofficial spokesman for the survivors, called a meeting in the main assembly hall. Friends, he addressed the mixed crowd of beings from dozens of worlds. Our rescuers face a difficult choice. They can withdraw to safety, or they can stay and face the combined might of the galactic powers. A young Altarian named Kira, one of the first beings rescued, spoke up. What would you choose, Corex? The old being's eyes grew distant with memory. I have lived long enough to see many species talk about justice and peace. But when the time comes to act, most find excuses. These humans acted because it was right, regardless of the cost to themselves. So what do? We stand with them, however we can. Back in the command center, Morrison was receiving an unexpected visitor. Captain Vex had requested an urgent meeting, accompanied by several other rescued ship captains. Commander, Vex began, we've been in contact with merchant captains across the sector. Word of your actions has spread through every commercial network in the galaxy. Morrison frowned. Is that a problem? On the contrary, Vex activated a portable display showing shipping routes across multiple star systems. Civilian populations on dozens of worlds are organizing supply convoys to support your operations. They're also providing intelligence on Krillian positions and requesting protection for their own worlds. The display showed the truth of his words. Hundreds of civilian vessels were converging on human positions, carrying medical supplies, food, repair materials, and volunteers. More significantly, they represented dozens of species and political entities. Morrison studied the data with growing realization. This isn't just about the Krillians anymore, is it? No, Commander. You've started something that goes far beyond a simple rescue operation. For the first time in centuries, ordinary beings across the galaxy believe someone will actually stand up to oppression. They're not just supporting you, they're joining you. That evening, Morrison convened a meeting with his senior staff. The holographic conference included commanders from ships spread across the sector, their images appearing around the central table. People, Morrison began, the situation has changed. The Galactic Council is mobilizing against us. Intelligence suggests over 200 ships representing the major galactic powers will be here within a week. We can withdraw now with our mission accomplished, or we can stay and face a war we might not win. Captain Rodriguez of the Thunderstrike was the first to respond. Sir, with respect, that's not really a choice. If we leave, what happens to the people we've liberated? What happens to the ones still waiting for liberation? Similar sentiments came from every ship commander. Not a single human officer was willing to abandon their mission, regardless of the odds they faced. Morrison felt a mixture of pride and concern. This was exactly what he had expected from his people, and exactly what worried him about the coming confrontation. Humans had never learned to calculate acceptable losses when innocent lives were at stake. Very well, we stay. But understand this changes everything. We're not just fighting pirates anymore. We're challenging the fundamental power structure that has allowed this suffering to continue for centuries. Lieutenant Commander Park leaned forward. Sir, there is one encouraging development. Intelligence suggests the incoming Council fleet isn't unified. Several member species are having second thoughts about attacking what is clearly a humanitarian mission. Meaning this might not be the massacre they're planning for. The galaxy is watching, sir. How this situation resolves will determine whether we're seen as liberators or conquerors. As the meeting concluded, Morrison stood alone in the command center, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, hundreds of ships were coming to destroy everything his people had built in this sector. But around those same stars, thousands of beings who had never known freedom were finally daring to hope for a better future. The battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin. 3 weeks after the first battle, the human presence in the sector had grown from 12 ships to over 60 vessels. Admiral Brooks had established a forward command base on the liberated world of New Haven, a former Krillian slave processing center that was now bustling with refugee aid operations. The transformation was remarkable. Where crude prison barracks had once housed thousands of slaves in misery, prefabricated human structures now provided clean medical facilities, communication centers, and temporary homes. The efficiency with which humans organized humanitarian operations impressed even their critics. Admiral Brooks reviewed the morning reports in her command center. The tactical display showed green zones expanding across the sector as human forces systematically dismantled Krillian operations. But she knew this success was temporary. The real test was yet to come. Status report, Brooks requested from her assembled staff. Colonel Marcus Webb stepped forward. Ma'am, we've liberated 23 slave facilities and destroyed 14 pirate bases. Enemy casualties include 58 vessels destroyed or captured. Our losses remain minimal, 3 ships requiring repairs. No fatalities. The numbers spoke to human tactical superiority. But Brooks understood they were facing opponents who had grown soft from decades of easy victories over helpless targets. The forces now approaching would be very different. Admiral, interrupted Communications Officer Hayes. Priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding immediate response. The main screen activated, showing the familiar council chamber. But this time, Counselor Thex was flanked by military leaders from across the galaxy. Their expressions ranged from nervous to openly hostile. Admiral Brooks, Thex began formally. The Council has reached a decision. Your military actions have exceeded all bounds of acceptable intervention. You will cease operations immediately and withdraw all forces from this sector. Brooks studied the assembled politicians with the experienced eye of a career military officer. Counselor, we've rescued over 5,000 enslaved beings and eliminated a significant threat to peaceful commerce. Our operations will continue until the sector is secure. General Korath of the Draconian Empire stepped forward, his reptilian features displaying obvious contempt. Human, your primitive species lacks the sophistication to understand galactic politics. The balance of power in this region has existed for centuries. Your interference threatens stability across multiple sectors. Brooks' smile was cold as winter. General, I understand perfectly. You've been comfortable letting the Krillians handle your dirty work while maintaining political distance. That arrangement ends now. The chamber erupted in angry voices until Thex restored order. Admiral, if your forces do not withdraw immediately, the Council will authorize collective military action. This is not a negotiation. Is that a threat, Counselor? It's a promise. The transmission ended, leaving the human command staff in contemplative silence. Colonel Webb finally spoke. Ma'am, they're mobilizing everything. Latest intelligence shows over 300 ships from 6 major powers. They'll arrive within 48 hours. Brooks nodded grimly. Composition? Battleship squadrons from the Draconian Empire, carrier groups from the Hegemony, plus support fleets from 4 minor powers. Combined firepower exceeds anything we've faced by a factor of 10. In the refugee camps scattered across New Haven, word of the approaching confrontation spread quickly. Orcs, who had become the unofficial leader of the freed slaves, called for a gathering in the main assembly hall. The crowd that assembled represented dozens of species united by their shared experience of Krillian brutality. Orcs stood before them, his aged face showing the wisdom of years spent in captivity. My friends, he began, our liberators face an impossible choice. They can withdraw to safety and preserve their forces, or they can stay and face certain destruction defending people they barely know. A voice from the crowd called out, What do you think they'll choose? Orcs was quiet for a long moment. I have lived through the rise and fall of governments, the promises of politicians, the negotiations of diplomats. In all that time, I have seen courage like this only once before in my life. The humans will stay. They will fight. And many of them will die. Then what do? We make sure their sacrifice means something. We stand with them in whatever way we can. Meanwhile, Captain Vex was meeting with Admiral Brooks in the command center. The Altarian trader carried data that would change everything. Admiral, Vex reported, I've been monitoring commercial channels across the sector. The response to your actions has been unprecedented. He activated a holographic display showing shipping lanes and communication networks spanning dozens of star systems. Civilian populations throughout the region are organizing. Supply convoys, intelligence networks, even volunteer militias. They're not just supporting your mission, they're joining it. Brooks studied the display with growing amazement. The network showed hundreds of civilian ships converging on human positions, carrying everything from medical supplies to volunteer fighters. More significantly, they represented dozens of species and political entities. Admiral, Vex continued, you've accomplished something no military force has achieved in galactic history. You've given ordinary beings hope that someone will actually fight oppression. This isn't just a human operation anymore, it's a galactic liberation movement. The implications were staggering. What had begun as a simple rescue mission had evolved into something that threatened the fundamental power structure of galactic civilization. That evening, Brooks convened her final strategic planning session. Holographic images of ship commanders appeared around the conference table, representing the entire human fleet. Ladies and gentlemen, Brooks began, you all understand our situation. Tomorrow we face the combined might of 6 galactic powers, over 300 ships carrying enough firepower to glass entire planets. We can withdraw now with honor, having accomplished more than anyone thought possible. Commander Morrison, now aboard the newly arrived Dreadnought Defiant, responded immediately. Admiral, with respect, withdrawal isn't an option. If we leave, what happens to the beings we've liberated? What happens to the thousands still waiting for rescue? Captain Rodriguez nodded agreement. Ma'am, my crew voted unanimously to stay. Every ship in the fleet reported the same result. Brooks felt the familiar mixture of pride and terror that came with commanding humans in an impossible situation. Her people had never learned to calculate acceptable losses when innocent lives hung in the balance. Very well. We make our stand, but understand we're not just fighting for this sector anymore. We're challenging the entire system that has allowed this suffering to continue. Win or lose, galactic politics will never be the same. Lieutenant Commander Park leaned forward with his intelligence report. Admiral, there is one factor working in our favor. The approaching Council fleet is politically divided. Several member species are questioning the wisdom of attacking a humanitarian mission. There's a real possibility the coalition will fragment under pressure. Meaning we might survive this after all. But only if we can convince the galaxy that we're liberators, not conquerors. As the meeting concluded, Brooke stood alone on the observation deck of her flagship, looking out at the refugee camps below. Thousands of beings who had lived their entire lives in slavery were now free, many for the first time ever. Tomorrow, 300 ships would arrive to destroy everything humanity had built here. But tonight, for the first time in centuries, beings across the galaxy were going to sleep believing that someone cared enough to fight for them. Whatever happened in the coming battle, that belief would outlive them all. The final confrontation was hours away. The combined Galactic Council fleet arrived at the edge of the system like a storm front made of metal and energy. 300 ships representing the most powerful military forces in the galaxy formed into battle formations that stretched across space for thousands of kilometers. Their combined firepower could have reduced entire planets to ash. Admiral Brooke stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Humanity's Pride, watching the massive armada deploy. Her own fleet of 68 ships seemed pitifully small by comparison. But around those ships, something unprecedented was happening. Over 200 civilian vessels had positioned themselves between the human fleet and the approaching Council forces. Merchant ships, passenger transports, cargo haulers, and even small pleasure craft formed a protective barrier. Their crews were volunteers from dozens of species, many of them former slaves liberated by human forces. Admiral, reported Communications Officer Hayes, we're receiving transmissions from the civilian fleet. They're requesting permission to stand with us in battle. Brooke shook her head sadly. Negative. Order all civilian vessels to withdraw to safe distance. This is a military engagement. Ma'am, they're refusing to move. The lead merchant captain says, and I quote, "We will not abandon the people who gave us our freedom." Before Brooks could respond, the main view screen activated. General Korath of the Draconian Empire appeared, his reptilian features twisted with contempt. "Human Admiral," Korath began, "you are outnumbered 5-1. Your position is hopeless. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated according to galactic conventions of war." Brooks's response was calm and measured. "General, we're conducting humanitarian operations in this sector. Our mission will continue until all enslaved beings are liberated. Your mission is illegal interference in sovereign space. You have violated dozens of interstellar treaties and destabilized an entire region. This ends now. General, let me ask you something. How many of those treaties specifically protect the right to enslave innocent beings? How many guarantee the right to profit from suffering?" The question clearly caught Korath off guard. "The legal complexities are not your concern. You will surrender or you will be destroyed." Brooks leaned forward, her expression hardening. "General, where I come from, we have a saying, give me liberty or give me death, we're not surrendering." The transmission cut off abruptly. Within minutes, the Council fleet began advancing in perfect formation, their weapons charging for the opening barrage. But something unexpected happened. As the two fleets closed to combat range, several ships in the Council formation suddenly broke away from their assigned positions. Then more ships followed, until entire squadrons were pulling back from the advance. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Park reported with amazement, "we're detecting massive defections in the enemy fleet. At least 60 ships have withdrawn from combat formation." "Identification?" "Mixed composition, ma'am. Looks like entire species are refusing to participate. The Centaurian Republic, the Free Worlds Alliance, and 3 others have declared neutrality." On the bridge of his flagship, General Korath watched in fury as his carefully planned battle formation disintegrated. Over a quarter of his forces were refusing to fight, claiming they would not fire on humanitarian vessels. "This is mutiny," he raged at his communications officer. "Order those ships back into formation immediately." "Sir, they're not responding to orders." Several captains have transmitted statements saying they cannot in good conscience attack forces that are liberating slaves. The political coalition that had seemed so solid on Centrix Prime was fracturing under the reality of combat. Many species that had voted for military action were now having second thoughts about actually pulling the trigger. Admiral Brooks seized the moment. All ships, this is Brooks. We're not here to conquer anyone or threaten galactic peace. We're here because thousands of innocent beings called for help and we answered. Any ship that wants to leave can do so without interference from us. Her words were broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every ship in both fleets. The effect was immediate. More council ships began withdrawing, their captains unwilling to be remembered as the officers who destroyed a rescue fleet. But General Korath still commanded over 200 vessels, and his determination to crush the human forces had only grown stronger. All remaining ships attack formation. We'll finish this quickly. The first exchange of fire was devastating. The Council fleet's opening barrage was massive enough to vaporize small moons, but the human ships responded with the same tactical innovation that had destroyed the Krillian pirates. Their formation split and reformed, creating multiple attack vectors that confused the enemy targeting systems. More importantly, the human ships were protecting something the Council forces couldn't attack: the civilian fleet. Any weapons fire that missed human vessels would strike the volunteer ships carrying refugees and medical supplies. The political implications made many Council captains hesitate to fire at full power. "Sir," reported the tactical officer aboard Humanity's Pride, "enemy fire is less coordinated than expected. Many of their ships are holding back, probably to avoid civilian casualties." Brooks nodded. "Press the advantage. All ships implement pattern Delta 7. Protect the civilians at all costs." The battle raged for 3 hours, but it was unlike any conflict in galactic history. Both sides were fighting under political constraints that limited their effectiveness. The Council forces couldn't use their full firepower without risking civilian casualties, while the human fleet was vastly outnumbered. But humans had one advantage that proved decisive. They were absolutely committed to their cause. Every human ship fought with the desperate courage of beings defending something more precious than their own lives. As the battle reached its climax, an unexpected voice cut through all communications channels. It was Korax, the elderly Centaurian who had become the spokesman for the liberated slaves. To all ships engaged in battle, his aged voice carried across space. "I am Korax of Centauri 7. I was a slave for 15 years. I watched my children die in Krillian work camps. I had given up all hope of freedom." His words were heard by every crew member in both fleets. These humans risked everything to save people they had never met. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. If you destroy them today, you destroy the only force in the galaxy that has actually stood up for the helpless. The effect was immediate and profound. More Council ships broke off from the attack, their crews unwilling to be part of destroying the galaxy's first real liberation movement. General Korath found himself commanding fewer than 50 ships, facing a human fleet that fought with the fury of the righteous. When his own flagship took critical damage from a human railgun, he finally accepted reality. "All ships cease fire," he transmitted bitterly. "Withdraw to safe distance. The battle was over." The human fleet had survived, but more importantly, they had won something greater than a military victory. They had proven to the entire galaxy that someone was finally willing to fight for justice, regardless of the cost. In the aftermath, as rescue ships from dozens of worlds arrived to help with wounded and refugees, Admiral Brooks received a transmission from the Galactic Council. Counselor Thex appeared on her screen, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. "Admiral Brooks," Thex began, "the Council would like to discuss establishing formal diplomatic relations with the Terran government. It seems we have much to learn from your people about the true meaning of justice." Brooks smiled for the first time in weeks. "Counselor, we'd be happy to talk. But our terms are simple. No more slavery, no more oppression of innocent beings, and no more looking the other way when people need help." "I believe," Thex replied carefully, "that those terms might be more acceptable than you think. The galaxy is changing, Admiral, thanks to your people." As the communication ended, Brooks looked out at the refugee ships filled with beings who would never have to fear slavery again. The price of their freedom had been high, but it was a price humanity had been willing to pay. The Deathworlders had come to rescue a few hundred slaves. They had ended up liberating an entire sector and changing galactic civilization forever. It was, she reflected, Exactly the kind of impossible thing humans did when they decided something was wrong and needed to be fixed. The galaxy would never be the same.